Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Roberts. I am joined again this evening by John Gauger. John, welcome.
Thank you, James.
It is snowing outside. Be safe, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the March 19th edition of Effective, Efficient, Affordable, and above all, accountable to you, the show that is going to remind you this evening how we in Connecticut came from being the nutmeg state to the Constitution state. Back in the day, in the 19th century, itinerant New England peddlers roamed the country selling their wares. Those from Connecticut became famous for their metal wares, but even more so for their nutmeg. So much was the fame of their nutmeg, I beg your pardon, that we became the nutmeg state. We in Connecticut became nutmeggers. Unfortunately, in addition to being famous for their nutmeg, they were famous for being conmen and shysters and liars and cheats. And no more so than in the sale of that nutmeg, which 9 times out of 10 was not nutmeg at all. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, they were selling all sorts of stuff, some of it good, some of it bad, all of it called nutmeg, none of it actually nutmeg. So much so that back in the 1950s, the state legislature said, why do we want to be the state of nutmeg? Why do we want to be nutmeggers? Why do we want to be liars and cheats and shysters and conmen? Should we not instead aspire to be something more noble? Should we not aspire to be the Constitution state, the cradle of American democracy, the cradle of that town hall full of government where the public, the citizenry, the merest people in our town can contribute in a meaningful way, can have their views heard? And that's what we became, ladies and gentlemen, the Constitution state, a state of public participation. Except in Winsted. Winsted seems to be reverting back to its nutmegging roots. Last night at the Board of Selectmen meeting, Mayor Welcome announced unilaterally that public comment in the way we know it is a thing of the past. Public comment will now be curtailed. You may not be nasty or rude about the Board of Selectmen or about the mismanagement of the town that they have wrought. This is not a particularly good step, ladies and gentlemen. We are being sold a bill of goods. We are being denied our rights, those rights that we aspire to under the Constitution state, to be a part of our government. And we are being denied those rights precisely so that we can be sold a bill of goods. The Board of Ed Chair Susan Hofnagel stood up and defended her Democrat colleague, Marianne Welcome, saying in a legalistic sort of way that a town meeting was quite different from a Board of Selectmen meeting, and if public comment was appropriate in a town meeting, it is not appropriate in a Board of Selectmen meeting, or at least can be appropriately limited. I would argue that if we are to aspire to democracy, that democracy should not begin and end with the calling to attention of a meeting and the adjourning of that meeting by the gavel of the chair. If we are to be a true town of the Constitution state, if we are to value our public input, we must live that public input. We must value it on a daily basis in everything we do. But that is not, as I say, what is happening in Winsted. In Winsted, we are being sold nutmeg of the most dubious quality, and we are being told to shut up and not question it. The first nutmeg that we got handed last night,
Deficit.
The town manager, Dale Martin, announced that there was no deficit. Now, we've been talking about a deficit for months. You've been talking about a deficit. Even Selectman Perez actually agreed last night that there was a deficit and agreed with some of the numerical components of that deficit. So it was a little bit of a surprise to hear Dale Martin suddenly announce out of the blue that there was, in fact, no deficit. To understand exactly what kind of nutmeg he is trying to sell us, we need to follow his reasoning, and we're going to use some nice, simple charts. We're going to put the first chart up on the screen. It will be labeled the balanced budget. This is what we expect to see, ladies and gentlemen, when we look at a budget.
Revenues equal expenses.
And this is what Dale Martin is telling us our current budget looks like. This is the current year. He is saying that revenues do, in fact, equal expenses. Perhaps he has managed even to shave a couple of $100,000 off the expenses line to generate a surplus. And he will argue, and pay attention, ladies and gentlemen, because this is the essence of the nutmeg. He will argue that every line item in the budget, every line item that he's included in that red expenses column, is coming in at or below budget. And that means there is no deficit.
Yes, but they're not counting the things that are not in the budget that we're paying for.
Therein lies the problem, ladies and gentlemen. Dale's perspective is true insofar as it goes. It just does not go very far. If we flip to slide number 2, we will begin to appreciate the magnitude of the problem that we actually face.
Revenues are the same, but you see on the right-hand side, expenses grow.
And what these expenses are, ladies and gentlemen, and there's no debate about this, the town attorney has confirmed this, the town manager has confirmed this, the interim finance manager has confirmed this, and in his weaker moments, the town manager has confirmed this. This represents the $500,000, it's actually a little less, $486,000 to be precise, but the $500,000 plus or minus of general obligation town debt service that we will pay this year that was never budgeted for. So we have our budgeted expenses, which are coming in at or below budget, but we have this extra $500,000 that was never budgeted for, which is to say that we never raised any revenue for. So you'll see in this chart that the column on the right, the red column, is bigger than the column on the left, the blue column. There's the first element of the deficit, ladies and gentlemen. Let us skip to the next chart. In this one, the column at the right is as you saw on the last chart. It's where you started off, plus the $500,000 of bond expense. Now we want to focus on the column on the left, the revenue chart. As you'll see, we've chopped this column into 3 pieces. The top piece, the very top piece of that blue chart, is revenue which doesn't actually exist. It never actually existed. As was acknowledged by the Board of Selectmen and the town manager merely 6 weeks after passing the budget, he overestimated the revenues. By how much he overestimated them, it was originally said it was 200, then it became 300, then it became a different number. Several months ago, you will recall, we got brought into OPM. The state of Connecticut asked the town manager and the finance manager and a team of worthies to come to Hartford to explain what in God's name was going on in Winston. And Dale Morton, the town manager, put together a letter with lots of charts and numbers to explain to the people in Hartford what was going on. And in that letter, he explained that we were going to collect approximately $1.2 million less in revenues than we had budgeted for. So that top slug in that blue column is $1.2 million that we budgeted to collect that we are not going to collect. Now, in full disclosure, the letter didn't make a whole lot of sense. The numbers were wrong. They didn't add up. That number could easily be $600,000 or it could easily be $1.5 million. We simply don't know. But I think it is widely accepted by everyone at this point that we will not collect all of the revenues that we budgeted to collect. That blue column contains a whole series of dollars that don't actually exist, that never actually existed. That's the first issue with the blue column.
Second issue is the actual revenues that we're getting that we're budgeted for.
This is the famous $1.2 million that we used to pay off the school's deficit. Now, once again, this is not an issue of the school's overspending. This is an issue last year of Marianne Welcome and her Board of Selectmen promising to give the schools an additional $1.3 million to meet the MBR. The snag was, of course, that we didn't have $1.3 million to give them. We had $100,000. And so we ended up short $1.2 million. So the year passes.
And they happen to spend it.
They spend it. They got a shoebox full of $1.2 million of bills. Those bills have to get paid for. And the only place there was to pay for them was out of this year's taxes. So we started off with the blue column, the same as the red column, and we took off the top the revenues that don't exist, the ones that we over budgeted for. Now we take off the dollars that we spent on last year's bills. We can only spend those dollars once, ladies and gentlemen. We are not miracle workers here. We get to spend each dollar once and once only. And every dollar that we spent on last year's bills is not available to meet this year's bills.
And the direction of the 2 columns is opposite of what you would like. You see the expenses getting bigger and the revenues getting smaller, which brings us to...
Lest there be any doubt, if for those of you who are not following our charts, we're going to make this pretty simple. This is the same chart, ladies and gentlemen, with a couple of additions. You will see a dotted line across the middle. That is the actual amount of revenues that we have this year. You will see the big circle on the right. That is the deficit. The red column is taller than the blue column. We have a deficit. We've been nutmegged, ladies and gentlemen. We've been told we have no deficit. Well, it's patently clear that we have a deficit. Again, the amount of that deficit is somewhere between $2.5 and $3.5 million. Could be anywhere in between that. Now, we haven't counted in the pension funds and the police funds and all of the other issues that have been raised in past months. This is purely and simply the dollars that don't exist because they were over budgeted, the dollars that were spent last year, and the additional expenses, the debt service, that we never bothered to budget for. We have a deficit. Don't let anyone tell you that we don't. If they tell you we don't have a deficit, they're not making you, ladies and gentlemen. They're selling you a bill of goods. That was the first nutmeg. The second nutmeg came from Selectman Perez. She, who you will recall from my prior comments, admitted to the existence of the deficit. Her nutmeg was a different one. She believes the deficit can be financed. She draws the analogy between this deficit and the debt that has built up within water and sewer. And she says that, well, if water and sewer can pay that debt back over 8 years, why can't we stretch our deficit over 8 years? The simple fact of the matter, ladies and gentlemen, is our deficit is quite different from the debt that is built up in water and sewer. Our deficit are bills that need to be paid. Water and sewer's deficit was borrowing that was borrowed from the fund balance. We have no fund balance to borrow from, ladies and gentlemen. The only place we can get the money to pay the deficit, to pay the bills that make up the deficit, is from next year's taxes.
That's from you and me.
Now, if there's an employee in town who's willing to sign up for their 8-year plan, who's willing to take no salary for 8 years, who's willing to buy no groceries for 8 years, buy no clothes for his kids for 8 years, then maybe Candy has a point. Maybe there is an 8-year financing plan. But if the people whose bills, which make up that deficit, expect to get paid anytime soon, there is no financing the deficit. The deficit is what the deficit is. The money has to be paid. The only place to take it from is next year's taxes. And the day they take it is day 1 of next year. July 1 of next year, they take your tax dollars and they pay the bills. They pay the bills from June 30th and June 29th and June 27th. And some of the bills that go all the way back to 2012. They pay the bills, ladies and gentlemen. They create another deficit.
In sales, we used to call it bringing it forward.
Yeah. It's a miraculous thing. It's how do you spend the same dollar 3 times over? The fact of the matter is, you just can't do it. Which brings us to the third nutmeg. Tonight there will be a
budget meeting.
Budget meeting. It'll be the first examination of the draft budget as presented by the town manager. And there's going to be a whole lot of nutmegs coming out of this meeting, ladies and gentlemen. The first nutmeg will come the characterization that this is a flat budget.
Flat budget. And the equalized grand list is 30.2. Or excuse me, not grand list, but
mill rate.
Mill rate.
So the town manager will present this as a regretful but necessary budget, a zero increase budget, the necessity to meet the unreasonable demands of the townspeople. That's the first nutmeg, ladies and gentlemen. This is nowhere close, even in its current draft form, to being a flat budget. Issue number 1. This budget contains somewhere between 1 and 1.5 mils of brand new taxation. This is the money that water and sewer is going to be raising through increased rates, 35% increases in sewer rates, 20% increase in water rates, to pay off town debt. Those are brand new taxes. The fact that they fall on those who are least able to pay them doesn't make them any less taxes. The fact that you don't get to vote on them doesn't make them any less taxes.
The fact that on April 1st, a water and sewer commission that technically doesn't exist, amending a rate ordinance, section 100 of the town rates or town ordinances, that they don't have the statutory approval to do, might throw a twist in all that stuff.
That'll be a future nutmeg we'll get onto later in the program. But the simple fact of the matter is that this new budget in its draft form has in it $750,000 of money coming in from water and sewer to pay off town debt. That's $750,000 of brand new additional taxes payable by those of you downtown.
A subset of the tax-paying population, those that are connected to water and sewer.
The second nutmeg associated with the flat budget claim is the idea that 30.2 mils is somehow less than 25.4 mils. Now, those of us who grew up doing math will be scratching our head at this one. How can 25 mils be less than, how can 30.2 mils be less than 25.4? Well, the fact of the matter is, it isn't. 30 is bigger than 25. It's that simple. Now, you will be told that it isn't that simple. That actually, because the value of your homes have dropped so dramatically, 30.2 is actually less than 25.4. Well, ain't that good? Just because the values of our homes have dropped, we should be happy. Because we're paying the same taxes. How does that happen?
How does your home drop 20%? You're paying the same tax. Where's the value in that? You would expect both to correlate, and with a 20% drop in value, you would see a minimum of a 20% drop in taxes.
But it gets better. It gets better. We are told not only that 30 is less than 25, which we dispute, but that at 30, most of us will be paying less than we did at 25, which we dispute. We are also told that even if most of us pay less, we will nevertheless collect the same. Now, for those of you who are mathematically inclined, if you believe that most of us are paying less, and yet we're somehow collecting the same, that means someone's paying a whole hell of a lot more. And that someone are the businesses downtown, the businesses in the industrial parks, and the folks who live downtown, who are paying on inflated values on their homes and are paying that water and sewer increase.
Yeah.
That's where all the additional money is coming from, ladies and gentlemen. Some 20% of households in Winsted will pay higher taxes, higher cash taxes on their real estate. Not talking about the water and sewer now, just purely on the real estate.
And let's interject here also is that the car tax is dead, and the personal property is approximately 10% of the grand list. That stuff has always been valued on a year-to-year basis, and the value of your car or your personal property really didn't go down.
Right.
So when you bump it up another 5 mils, you're paying a whole hell of a lot more on your personal property and your autos.
And the universe of folks who are paying this, whether it be the downtown residents, whether it be the downtown businesses, this is precisely the universe who have been so severely punished in the past and whom we have spent the last 6 months arguing we should be investing in. This is the area of town that we have to save.
In this, what we're doing is pushing them out. While we might be performing the nutmeg dance to fleece them of 1.5 mils on the sewer and water rates and pump that into the budget, that increase against their personal property tax, and if they have a vehicle that they use for business, goes up exponentially. So they lose all the way around.
And what are these tax rises, these tax increases actually buying us? I mean, it would be one thing, ladies and gentlemen, if our leaders basically said, yes, let's be honest, there are tax increases. There are both water and sewer increases and real estate increases, but we're doing good things with those increases. We are restructuring our town, we are making it bigger and better, and all the rest of those good things. Not so much.
Well, you know, let's look at it this way. After we've gone through the Board of Education and their fiasco with their reporting structure and not being able to track the cash, we've been now 6 months into the town finance fiasco and not being able to report and track the cash. We're presenting a new budget that uses the same machines, the same software, and has the same dual. Now we have 2 CPAs. And you know, the change to the charter still sits on the books to consolidate the financial system. So if you don't see movement and change, excuse me.
Technical difficulty here, loss of a microphone.
Loss of the microphone. You better look again and say that why are we continuing down this road if this is the result of the process that we have undertaken in the past? If you don't change, if you don't consolidate onto one platform with an updated financial structure under one director of finance, this budget will never get my vote.
Yeah, I mean, we are being essentially asked to pay more for taxes, whether it be water and sewer rates or actual real estate taxes. We are being told that we're actually not paying more, that that's somehow a figment of our imaginations. And we're being asked to do that so we could do more of the same. I mean, we've talked at length about the various ways that we can restructure town. One of the things we've talked about is benefits. It is startling when you read through
when you consolidate the salaries against the benefits.
Let me read you a list. The Office of the Town Clerk. Now, I don't want to single out individuals here, but we'll go by office. The Office of the Town Clerk. Combined salaries of $101,000, combined benefits $52,000. That's a 50% benefit rate. Office of the Tax Collector. Combined salaries $103,000, 58 in benefits. That's close to 60% in taxes. Town Hall generally, 40,000 in salary, 31,000 in benefits, 75%. Police, 1.6 million in salary, $1 million in benefits. That's way up there too.
60%.
Yeah. It's not to say that individuals shouldn't earn a good living. It is not to say that individuals shouldn't be paid a living wage. It is not to say that individuals shouldn't be paid a competitive wage. But we're not talking about individuals, ladies and gentlemen. We are talking about the overall financial structure of our town. And we have created a structure that is eating us alive. We have created a structure in which people costs are growing out of all proportion to our ability to pay, and in which the fastest component of our people costs are completely out of our control. We don't control benefit costs, except insofar as we change those benefits. And that is eating us alive. So, let's review the nutmegs. Which are the lemons that we're being sold here? Lemon number one was there is no deficit. I think we've established that unless you view that on an extremely narrow basis, there most definitely is a deficit. It's between $2.5 and $3.5 million. Nutmeg number two, the deficit can be financed. It cannot be financed. It has to come as the first dollars off next year's taxes. Unless we have employees or suppliers who are willing to go for years without actually getting paid, there is no one to finance that deficit. It's a cash hole. It will suck up the first dollars of next year's taxes.
We're on a cash basis.
Nutmeg number three, and this is a whole collection of nutmegs. The budget, as proposed in draft form to the Board of Selectmen to be discussed this evening, is flat. It is not. It is anything but flat. It entails dramatic increases in taxation in the form of water and sewer rates. It entails dramatic increases in cash real estate taxes for 20% of the household in town. It entails dramatic increases in taxation as a value of your property for everyone else in town. The argument that you should be happy to pay modestly up or flat taxes for dramatically reduced property value is not an argument that has a lot of merit.
Only in the nutmeg state.
Only in a nutmeg state, when you pay good money for something which is essentially worthless. We are being sold a whole lot of nutmeg, ladies and gentlemen. Which brings us to the last nutmeg, which is the subject of tomorrow's public hearing. And this is the water and sewer nutmeg. You want to deal with this one?
Well, you know, I tried to explain it once again last night, but the ability of an appointed body, which is the non-legislative body of the town of a town, to effectively amend an ordinance, which by the Home Rule statutes require the legislative body, in this case the Board of Selectmen, to amend, is a stretch, number one. Number two, when you go in and review the charter, the ordinances, the bylaws, the resolutions, there's no structure to the Water and Sewer Commission. Nowhere does it say whether it's appointed or elected. It doesn't lay out the number of members. It doesn't even say whether they're compensated or not. It doesn't give their terms. Nothing. It literally does not exist, and it has to exist. It has to be fleshed out by the Home Rule Statute 7-193B. The state statute requires that you provide an ordinance, that you provide a charter statement, that you provide bylaws or a resolution to state what it is, how it functions, and what it does. If you go into our ordinances and resolutions, there's nothing there. So in essence, you have a non-existent body amending an ordinance that it doesn't have the statutory authority to do.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the authority to
and right now it is contained to the Water and Sewer Organization. They want to build that financial structure into the 1.5 mils of the budget, and guess what? The whole thing will blow up. Somebody will sue. I mean, you are...
We've gone from the land of nutmeg to the land of Alice in Wonderland, the land of complete fiction and imagination. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The Constitution state is a state which values public participation, public accountability, the questioning by the public of their government. Winstead, the state of Nutmeg, this town of Nutmeg, desires no such thing. The town manager, Del Martin, Candy Perez, have made valiant efforts to sell you on something which we would argue is bogus. They are, in a sense, the true descendants of those Yankee peddlers selling fraudulent nutmeg, but at least they're making the effort. Mayor Welcome has no interest in selling you nutmeg. Mayor Welcome has no interest in selling you anything.
In fact, she doesn't even want you to be comfortable anymore, as the chairs have been removed from the selectmen meeting room.
Yeah, Mayor Welcome is not about the act of selling, of persuasion, of telling you, explaining anything. Mayor Welcome is about beating you over the head and taking your money. We got one last slide for you, ladies and gentlemen. And for those of you who find any sort of resonance in what we're saying, we advise you to make yourselves a sign like this. Put it on your lawn.
Sit down on a hard bench. No more cushioned chairs around. Shut up and pay your taxes.
Sit down, shut up, and pay your taxes. Make yourself a sign, ladies and gentlemen. Put it on your lawn. Take it to the Board of Selectmen meeting. Because, you know, skunks, people like us, we're not going to sit down. We're certainly not going to shut up. And it's unclear whether we'll ever be able to pay our taxes. We have been nutmegged, ladies and gentlemen. You have been nutmegged. It is time for the skunks to stand up and say, "Don't nutmeg me, bro. Save us from the nutmegs." Save yourself from the nutmegs, ladies and gentlemen, and begin to appreciate your government for what it really is. Your government is abusing you. Your government is fibbing to you. Your government is not doing what you need your government to do. With that, we will call it a night and wrap it up until later in the budget process.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening.
Good evening.